Hi guys and welcome to Crazy Pepper Revenge. This channel is all about crazy true stories, stuff that happens in real life when things get a little bit messy.
My wife Vanessa left for wine country that Tuesday morning without saying goodbye. Just loaded her Louis Vuitton bags into her BMW and drove off like she was escaping something. I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee, watching her taillights disappear around the corner of our Portland suburb. The steam from my mug curled up in lazy patterns while I tried to remember the last time she'd kissed me goodbye. Months, maybe longer. 2 weeks away with her girlfriends, she'd said. 2 weeks of freedom from dealing with our situation at home. She'd been planning this trip for what felt like forever, treating it like some kind of military operation with spreadsheets and packing lists and constant phone calls to her mother. Our situation, that's what she called our 12-year-old son, Marcus. Not by his name anymore, just the situation, the burden, the problem that had consumed our lives for the past 6 years. I hated when she said it like that, but I'd stopped arguing with her about it years ago. Arguing with Vanessa only led to fights that ended with me sleeping on the couch and her giving me the silent treatment for days. Marcus had been paralyzed since he was 6. A terrible accident at our vacation rental by the lake, falling off a dock and hitting his head on the support beam underneath. The doctor said his spinal cord was damaged beyond repair. We'd spent 6 years watching him struggle in that wheelchair, going through countless medications, burning through our savings on treatments that never worked. The specialized hospital bed alone had cost a fortune. The motorized wheelchair, the bathroom modifications, the physical therapy equipment that gathered dust in the corner of Marcus's room because Vanessa had fired the last 3 therapists for not showing enough progress. It destroyed us financially and emotionally. Vanessa became cold and distant, always hovering with her clipboard and schedules and endless pills. I became a shell of myself, constantly exhausted, foggy-headed, barely able to function at my engineering job. Some days, I could barely remember what I'd worked on the day before. I was still standing there, staring at nothing, lost in thought about how my life had become this endless gray routine, when I heard footsteps behind me. Normal footsteps. Walking footsteps. Not the shuffle of someone struggling, not the creak of a wheelchair, but actual steady footsteps coming down the stairs. My coffee mug hit the floor and exploded into pieces. Hot coffee splashed across my shoes and the tile, but I barely noticed. I spun around and there was Marcus standing at the bottom of the stairs, walking toward me like he'd never stopped. Like the past 6 years had been some kind of sick joke. My brain couldn't process it. This was impossible. I'd watched him struggle for 6 years. Watched him cry in frustration when his legs wouldn't work. Watched Vanessa measure out his medications 3 times a day, every day, without fail. "Dad," he said, his voice urgent and scared in a way I'd never heard before. His gray eyes, my eyes, were wide with something that looked like terror. "We need to leave right now. She's set something up, and they're coming." I couldn't speak, couldn't process what I was seeing. My paralyzed son, walking, moving with purpose and strength. His posture was straight, his movements confident. This wasn't someone taking their first steps after years of paralysis. This was someone who'd been walking all along. "There's no time to explain." Marcus grabbed my arm with surprising strength. His grip was firm, urgent. I've been faking it for 4 years. I had to. If she knew I could walk, she would have eliminated me sooner. "Please, Dad, just trust me. Get your keys. We have to go before they get here." The words were coming out of his mouth, but they weren't making sense. Faking it? For 4 years? My 12-year-old son had been pretending to be paralyzed for 4 years? That's when I heard it. A vehicle pulling into our driveway. A large van with a heavy engine, the kind contractors use. But we weren't expecting any contractors. We weren't expecting anyone. Marcus went white. "They're early. The garage now." Something in his terror overrode every question in my brain. I grabbed my keys and we ran. We burst into the garage, jumped into my Tahoe, and I hit the garage door opener. It rose so slowly. Too slowly. Through the gap I could see boots. 2 pairs of heavy work boots. Men in dark clothes and ski masks. "Go!" Marcus shouted. I floored it. The Tahoe shot backward, and the men jumped aside. I caught a glimpse of something metallic in one guy's hand before we were screeching down the street, tires smoking. "Head toward the industrial district," Marcus said, breathing hard. There's a storage unit. Number 189. I'll explain everything there. I checked the rearview mirror. The dark van was following us. Marcus, what the hell is going on? My son turned to me, and I saw tears streaming down his face. Mom's been trying to eliminate us, both of us, and I have proof. The words didn't make sense. Vanessa, my wife of 8 years, trying to eliminate us. It was insane. 4 years ago, my legs started working again, Marcus said rapidly, watching the van behind us. The doctors called it spontaneous recovery, but Mom got really upset. She increased my medications, and I got worse again. Dizzy, weak, couldn't think straight. Then one day I pretended to take my pills and hid them instead. I started feeling better. That's when I realized she was poisoning me to keep me paralyzed. My hands were shaking on the wheel. You're saying she was poisoning you? Yes, and she's been poisoning you too, Dad. In your coffee every morning. Haven't you noticed how exhausted you've been? How foggy your mind gets? I had. The constant fatigue, the way my thoughts moved through mud. I'd blamed stress and age. I've been watching her for 4 years, Marcus continued, his voice shaking. Playing paralyzed so she wouldn't know I figured it out. I've been collecting evidence. Recordings, documents, pills I swapped out and hid. Dad, she's done this before. Her first husband, Richard Brennan, died in a house fire 8 years ago, right before she married you. Life insurance paid out almost $1 million. I found newspaper articles, insurance documents, everything. The fire was ruled accidental, but it wasn't. It was homicide. My brain was screaming that this couldn't be real, but my gut knew it was true. Everything clicked into place with horrible clarity. The way Vanessa had always been so secretive about her past. How she'd never wanted to talk about Richard. The expensive lifestyle she'd maintained, even before we got married. The way she'd insisted on handling all of Marcus's medical care herself, never letting me be involved in the decisions. Those men back there, Marcus said, glancing at the side mirror, they're going to make it look like an electrical fire tonight. We were supposed to be asleep, dead. She's been planning this for months. I've seen the text messages, Dad. I've heard the phone calls. Tonight was supposed to be the night we died. I pulled into the storage facility and navigated to Unit 189. My hands were still shaking. Marcus punched in a code and the door rolled up with a metallic screech. What I saw inside stopped my heart. The entire unit was set up like an investigation headquarters. Laptops, cameras, filing boxes, and a wall covered in photographs and documents connected with string like something out of a detective show. In the center was a photo of a man I didn't recognize, mid-30s, smiling at the camera with kind eyes. He looked happy, unaware of what was coming for him. Richard Brennan, Marcus said quietly, following my gaze. Mom's first sufferer. He rented this unit before he died. He knew something was wrong and was documenting her. I found the key in Mom's things, hidden in a box she thought she'd buried deep enough. There was a letter inside from Richard. He was scared. He knew she was poisoning him, but he didn't figure it out in time. I've been adding to his research ever since. I stared at my 12-year-old son, this stranger who'd spent 4 years of his childhood pretending to be paralyzed, building a case against his own mother. Who was this kid? When had he stopped being my little boy and become this? How did you even do all this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Marcus pulled down the door, sealing us inside. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. After I figured out what Mom was doing, I knew I had to be smart. I started pretending to be asleep when she thought I was knocked out from medication. I heard things, phone calls, her talking to Grandma Lillian. Dad, Grandma knows about this. She planned it. This is their family business. They've been doing this for decades. He pulled up a file on his laptop, showing a family tree, the Whitmore family. Next to several names were dates, dollar amounts, and the word deceased in red letters. 3 generations, Marcus said softly, his finger tracing the connections. The Whitmore women marry men with money or good life insurance. They slowly poison them, make them dependent, then stage accidents. House fires mostly. But there have been drownings, car accidents, even one that looked like a heart attack. I've documented 14 cases over 30 years. 14 men, Dad. 14 families destroyed. I felt sick. My stomach churned and I thought I might throw up right there. I'd met Lillian Whitmore dozens of times. The sweet grandmother who brought homemade cookies to family gatherings, who'd helped with Marcus after his accident, who'd been in our house countless times with access to everything. She'd hugged me, called me son, and the whole time she was planning to eliminate me. I've been ready for this, Marcus continued, pulling up more screens. I swapped the SIM cards in our home security cameras 3 months ago. Everything that happens there tonight will record to a cloud server they don't know about. I've set up redundant backups, encrypted everything. Even if they find one server, there are 2 more they'll never locate. A knock on the storage unit door made us both jump. My heart hammered against my ribs. Mr. Thompson? Marcus? We know you're in there. Let's talk about this reasonably. The voice was calm, almost friendly, like a neighbor asking to borrow a lawnmower. Marcus pulled up a photo on his laptop with shaking hands. A man in his 50s with graying hair and a trustworthy face. The kind of guy you'd trust to watch your house while you were on vacation. Vincent Crawford, Grandma Lillian's boyfriend. He's eliminated at least 6 people that I can prove. Maybe more. He's the one who sets the fires, makes them look accidental. He's been doing this for the family since the early 2000s. We just want to talk, Vincent continued outside, his voice muffled by the metal door. Your mother is worried about you, Marcus. She asked us to check on you. Marcus shook his head and showed me screenshots of text messages between Vanessa and Vincent. The timestamps were from this morning, just hours ago. They'll both be asleep by 10 p.m. Make it look electrical. I want it done before midnight. Vanessa's response made my blood run cold. Good. I can't do another 6 years of this. The kid creeps me out. The kid. She'd called her own son, the kid. Like he was some kind of pest she needed to exterminate. The door shuttered. They were trying to force it open. There's another way out, Marcus said, already moving. Ventilation shaft in the back. It connects to the next unit. I rented it under a fake name. We can get to the car I have parked 2 rows over. You have a car? Richard Brennan's old Honda. I found the keys and title here. Been maintaining it for 2 years. We crawled through the ventilation shaft as the storage unit door gave way behind us. By the time Vincent and his partner got inside, we were gone, driving away in a dead man's car. Marcus directed me to a motel on the outskirts of town, a rundown Motel 6 that looked like it had seen better days decades ago. The neon sign flickered weakly in the fading daylight. He'd booked a room 3 days ago, paid cash, used Richard's name. My 12-year-old son had planned an escape route like a trained operative, like someone 3 times his age with years of experience. Inside the dingy motel room that smelled like cigarette smoke and cheap air freshener, Marcus set up his laptops on the small table and pulled up live feeds from our house. Multiple camera angles showing empty rooms, living room, kitchen, hallway, Marcus's bedroom with that hospital bed that had cost us thousands of dollars. Everything looked normal, quiet, waiting. Tonight, between 10 and midnight, they'll break in and set the fire, Marcus explained, his fingers flying across the keyboards. We're going to record everything. Then I'm going to hack into Grandma Lillian's personal server and download 30 years of evidence. Financial records, communications, everything. By tomorrow morning, we'll have enough to destroy them all. We should call the police right now, I said, pacing the small room. Show them what you have. No. Everything I have is circumstantial. Recordings from a kid could be dismissed. A good lawyer would tear it apart. We need them to actually commit the crime. Then we'll have them. Then there's no way they can talk their way out of it. You want to let them burn down our house? They already think we're inside, Dad. Dead or dying from the medication. We're going to watch them do it, document everything, and then we're going to destroy them completely. Every single one of them. I looked at my son, at the steel in his eyes, and realized he'd been living in a war zone while I'd been too poisoned to notice. While I'd been stumbling through my days in a fog, he'd been fighting for both our lives. Okay, I said finally, we do this your way, but I have conditions. What conditions? You stay here. You run the technical side, the hacking, the recordings, coordinating everything. But if anything goes wrong, if they figure out we're not in the house, I'm the one who deals with it, not you. You've already sacrificed 4 years of your childhood. You don't sacrifice anything else. Marcus started to protest, but I cut him off with a look. I mean it. You've been the adult for too long. Let me be your father. Let me protect you. Even if it's 4 years too late. Something in Marcus's expression crumbled. The adult facade slipped, and for a moment, I saw the scared kid underneath. the child who'd been alone in this fight for so long. "Okay," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Okay, Dad." We spent hours preparing. Marcus walked me through every system, every backup plan, every contingency he'd thought of over the past 4 years. The kid had thought of everything: backup power for the recordings, multiple redundant servers in different locations, emergency contacts who'd receive the evidence if something went wrong. He showed me how to access everything, where the passwords were stored, what to do if he couldn't finish the hack. It was overwhelming and impressive and heartbreaking all at once. At 8 p.m., we ordered pizza from a place 3 blocks away. I went to pick it up, wearing a baseball cap pulled low and keeping my head down. The paranoia was new but necessary. I kept expecting to see Vanessa or Vincent or someone from the Whitmore family around every corner. But the streets were normal, people going about their Tuesday evening, completely unaware that a child had been waging a secret war against serial butchers. Back at the motel, we ate in silence, watching the feeds from our house. Everything remained still, waiting. The calm before the storm. Marcus picked at his pizza, barely eating. I realized he was terrified despite his careful planning. At 9:30 p.m., Marcus's laptop pinged with a text message to Vanessa's phone, which he was monitoring through the cloud. "Ready to go. 10:45 entry." Vanessa's response came quickly, almost eagerly. "Make it clean. I want to come home to ashes." Any doubt I had evaporated in that moment. My wife wanted me dead, wanted our son dead, had been planning it for months, maybe years, and she was excited about it. I felt something inside me break and harden at the same time. At 10:43 p.m., the security cameras caught movement. A dark van pulled into our driveway, lights off, moving slowly and deliberately. 2 figures emerged and walked toward our house with practiced efficiency, like they'd done this 100 times before. "They're using Mom's key," Marcus narrated, zooming in on one of the camera feeds. His voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor underneath. "See the bags they're carrying? That's accelerant and ignition devices. Professional grade stuff." I watched these men invade our home, walking through our living room where we'd celebrated Marcus's birthdays, our kitchen where I'd made him breakfast every morning, the hallway where he'd taken his first steps 12 years ago. They moved with confidence, no hesitation. They opened the basement door and began setting up small devices near electrical panels, behind the water heater, along support beams. It was methodical, practiced, terrifying. "Incendiary devices with timers," Marcus explained, his fingers flying across another keyboard. "They'll set them for midnight, gives them time to get clear and establish alibis. By the time the fire department arrives, the house will be fully involved. We would have died in our sleep, never knowing what happened." On another screen, a progress bar showed Marcus's hack into Lillian's server. 47% complete, then 53%, then 61%. I watched the numbers climb while my house was being rigged to burn. The men finished their work and left at 11:02 p.m. They did a quick sweep of the house first, checking the bedrooms. I saw one of them point at Marcus's empty hospital bed and say something to the other. They both laughed. Actually laughed. These men were about to homicide a child and they were laughing about it. The van pulled away, lights still off, disappearing into the Seattle night like a ghost. "Timers are set for midnight," Marcus confirmed. "We have 58 minutes. The hack progress bar hit 73%, then 89%. At 11:47 p.m., Marcus's laptop chimed. "Downloading now." I watched as folders and files began transferring. Financial records, communication logs, video files, gigabytes of data spanning decades. "Holy crap," Marcus breathed. "Dad, look at this." He pulled up a spreadsheet listing names, dates, methods, and payouts. 18 sufferers spanning back to 1991. The Whitmore family legacy was even worse than Marcus had documented. At 11:58 p.m., with the download at 96%, the house cameras showed a flash of light in the basement. Then another. The timers had activated early. "They moved up the timeline," I said, watching flames spread impossibly fast through our home. Marcus's face went pale. "Because they know. Somehow, they know we're not there." On screen, our house was becoming an inferno. 6 years of our lives burning. "The backup drives," Marcus said urgently. I had physical backups hidden in my room, Some of Richard's original documents were too fragile to scan. I kept them in a fireproof safe in my closet. If those burn, we lose critical chain of custody evidence. The download hit 100%. The digital files were secured, but Marcus was right about the physical evidence. I grabbed the car keys. Where's the safe exactly? Dad, no, the house is burning. Where, Marcus? Back left corner of my closet. Combination is 0817. But Dad, you can't. I was already running. The Civic screamed through empty streets, running every red light. I could see the orange glow from 3 blocks away, lighting up the night sky like a beacon. The fire department hadn't arrived yet. Probably called in as an electrical fire, low priority compared to actual emergencies. I parked down the street and ran toward the burning house. Heat hit me like a physical wall, pushing me back. But I pushed forward. The front door was still intact, though smoke was pouring from every window. I pulled my shirt over my mouth and nose and kicked the door in with everything I had. Smoke filled my lungs immediately, burning, choking. I dropped low where the air was slightly clearer and moved as fast as I could. Living room, hallway. The heat was intense. I could hear the fire roaring behind the walls, eating through everything. Marcus's room. The door was hot to the touch, the paint already bubbling. I wrapped my hand in my shirt and turned the handle, praying it wouldn't be locked. The room was thick with smoke, but not yet burning. I could barely see 2 feet in front of me. I could make out the hospital bed, the wheelchair, all the props of Marcus's false imprisonment. All the lies, the closet, back left corner. I ripped open the door and dug through shoes and old clothes with desperate hands. There, a small fireproof safe bolted to the floor. My fingers fumbled with the combination, shaking from adrenaline and fear. 081 scene, come on. 081 scene. The lock clicked open. Inside were documents and plastic sleeves. Richard's handwriting, medical records, photographs. I grabbed the safe and turned to run. The explosion came from the basement. Gas line, my mind registered. The house shuddered. The floor beneath me buckled. And suddenly I was falling through fire and smoke and collapsing timber. I hit something hard. Pain exploded through my shoulder and ribs, but my hand still clutched the safe. I crawled through what had been the kitchen toward the back door. Hands grabbed me, pulled me. Firefighters. They dragged me out into clean air. An EMT tried to take the safe from me. I held tighter. Evidence, I croaked. Homicide evidence. FBI agent Sam Osborne. They looked at me like I was crazy, but they let me keep it. As they loaded me into an ambulance, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Dad, answer me. Are you alive? With shaking, burned fingers, I typed back. Got it, I'm okay. Meet Agent Osborne tomorrow. We've got them. The hospital discharge papers said I had second-degree burns on my hands and forearm, smoke inhalation, 3 bruised ribs, and a possible concussion. The doctor wanted to keep me overnight for observation, kept insisting it was necessary. I signed myself out AMA against medical advice and called an Uber to take me back to the Motel 6. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, at my bandaged hands and the soot still on my face, but he didn't ask questions. Marcus was pacing the parking lot when I arrived at 3 a.m., wearing a path in the asphalt. The moment he saw me climbing out of the Uber, he broke down completely, ran to me and hugged me carefully, mindful of the bandages, his whole body shaking with sobs. You're insane, he said through tears, his voice muffled against my chest. Completely insane! I thought I lost you. I watched the house collapse on the cameras, and I thought you were dead. I thought I'd eliminated you by sending you in there. Hey, I said, holding him as tight as I could without aggravating my injuries. I made a promise. I told you I'd protect you. That meant getting the evidence. We're in this together, buddy, all the way. Inside the motel room, Marcus had already photographed every document from the safe with gloved hands, treating each piece of evidence with the care of a professional investigator. The room looked even more like a command center now. Screens everywhere, files organized with meticulous precision. I got everything from Lillian's server, he said, falling back into business mode, his armor against the fear and trauma. 32 years of records, 18 sufferers total. Financial transactions linking all the Whitmore women going back 3 generations. Communication records between family members planning the homicides. Dad, some of them recorded the homicides. They kept trophies, video files of men dying. I felt sick. My stomach churned. Jesus Christ. There's more. I found connections to the men who helped. Vincent Crawford and 3 others. They're contractors who've been staging accidents for the family since the early 2000s for a cut of the insurance money. It's a whole network. They have offshore accounts, shell companies, everything. Marcus pulled up a financial web on one of his screens, showing money flowing from insurance companies to the Whitmores, then branching out to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Panama. Agent Osborne will want to see this first thing in the morning, I said, staring at the web of corruption. Already scheduled. I called his emergency tip line an hour ago. Left a message that I was the whistleblower he's been communicating with and that I have evidence related to a series of homicides disguised as accidents. He called back 20 minutes later. We're meeting him at 8 a.m. at the FBI field office downtown. At 6 a.m., we packed everything with methodical care. 3 backpacks full of hard drives, laptops, and documents, the evidence that would destroy an entire family of butchers and bring justice to 18 homicided men. We arrived at the FBI building early and waited in the parking garage, both of us too wired to speak. At precisely 8 a.m., we walked into the lobby. I gave our names to security and said we had a meeting with Agent Osborne. The security guard looked at my bandaged hands and Marcus's young face with obvious curiosity, but waved us through. 10 minutes later, Sam Osborne himself came down to meet us. He was in his 40s, with graying temples and eyes that had seen too much, the kind of eyes that missed nothing. He looked at me and Marcus, a burned man, and a kid who should have been in middle school, carrying backpacks like we were going on a field trip, and I saw the moment recognition clicked in his expression. "You're the whistleblower," he said to Marcus, his voice careful and measured. "The one who's been feeding me information about the Whitmores for the past 6 months." "Yes, sir," Marcus said, standing straighter. "And we have everything you need to arrest them. All of them. Every single person involved in this operation." We spent 6 hours in a conference room on the 4th floor, laying it all out piece by piece. The digital files from Lillian's server, Richard's original documents from 8 years ago, crystal clear video of the arson from multiple angles, medical records showing the systematic poisoning of both Marcus and me, Marcus's 4 years of meticulous surveillance and documentation, financial records tracking insurance money through multiple homicides across 3 decades. It was overwhelming in scope. Osborne brought in other agents, technical specialists who examined the digital evidence for authenticity, prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office who would be building the case. They watched the videos of Vincent and his partner setting the fire in our house, their movements captured in high definition from 6 different camera angles. They read the text messages between Vanessa and her accomplices, the casual way they discussed homiciding us. They saw the spreadsheet of sufferers dating back to 1990. 18 names, 18 families destroyed for money. By 2 p.m., arrest warrants were being drafted for 7 individuals. By 4 p.m., tactical teams were mobilizing across 3 states. At 6 p.m., Marcus and I watched from Osborne's office as news broke on every channel. Multiple arrests in a complex homicide-for-hire scheme spanning 3 decades. Vanessa Thompson, Lillian Whitmore, Vincent Crawford, and 4 others taken into custody simultaneously. Federal charges including homicide, conspiracy to commit homicide, insurance fraud, arson, and racketeering. Vanessa's mugshot flashed on screen. She looked shocked, confused, her perfect hair disheveled, her makeup smeared, like she couldn't understand how she'd been caught, how her perfect plan had fallen apart. "She'll try to cut a deal," Osborne said, watching the news coverage with us. "They always do. But with this much evidence, with this many sufferers, federal sentencing guidelines don't leave much room for leniency. She's looking at life without parole. They all are." Marcus's hand slipped into mine, small and warm. "It's over," he whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. "We actually won." "Yeah," I said, squeezing his hand gently. "We won." But I knew it wasn't really over. There would be trials that could last months, media attention that would make us targets of public scrutiny, intensive therapy for Marcus to process years of trauma, years of processing what we'd both been through. The road ahead was long and complicated and uncertain. But we were together. We were alive. And the people who'd tried to destroy us were facing justice. For now, that was enough. 3 months later, Marcus was in his first real therapy session with Dr. Lena Mraz, a specialist in childhood trauma who came highly recommended by the FBI's Witness Protection Program. We weren't in witness protection since the Whitmores were all in custody without bail, But the program had resources that were helping us rebuild our lives from scratch. I was meeting with a sufferer's advocate named Tracy Sheridan about the trial timeline. The prosecution was building an airtight case, but it would take months to sort through all the evidence, to coordinate with multiple jurisdictions where the Whitmores had operated. The good news was that Richard Brennan's family was finally getting answers after 8 long years of questions. His sister Elena had been trying to prove his passing wasn't an accident, had been fighting the insurance company, had been told she was crazy and paranoid. Marcus and I had given her that closure, had validated everything she'd suspected. The insurance companies were filing civil suits to recover fraudulent payouts totaling over $12 million. There was a strong likelihood that sufferers' families would see restitution, including us. Between the civil suits and criminal asset forfeiture, the Whitmores' entire estate would be liquidated and divided among the 18 families they'd destroyed. Money wouldn't fix anything, wouldn't give Marcus back his childhood or me back my faith in people, or bring back the men who'd been homicided. But it would mean stability, security, a chance to rebuild. Marcus could go to college without debt. We could start over somewhere new. We could breathe. The advocate Tracy was fighting hard to protect Marcus from having to testify in person at the trial. His written statements and video depositions should be sufficient given his age and the circumstances. The physical evidence was overwhelming enough without putting a child through that ordeal. Making a 12-year-old relive years of trauma on a witness stand while his mother stared at him from the defense table wasn't necessary, and Tracy was determined to prevent it. After the meeting, I picked Marcus up from therapy. He climbed into the car quietly. "How was it?" I asked. "Weird. She wants me to talk about my feelings." He said it like it was a foreign concept. I'm not good at that. None of us are at first, but it helps, trust me. We stopped for burgers. Real food, not the nutrition-controlled meals Vanessa had insisted on. Marcus ate like a normal kid for the first time I could remember, actually tasted his food, smiled at the cheese pull on his burger. Small victories. Back at our apartment, Marcus set up his laptop. He wasn't hacking anymore. Osborne had made him promise to use his skills legally from now on. But he was learning programming properly, taking online courses, channeling his abilities into something constructive. "Dad?" Marcus said without looking up from his screen. "Yeah?" "Thank you for believing me, for getting the evidence from the house, for everything." I crossed the room and hugged my son, really hugged him. "You saved us, Marcus. All of this, you did it. You're the bravest person I've ever known." Marcus hugged back, and I felt the tension in his shoulders finally start to release. Just a little. Just enough. We had a long road ahead. Years of therapy, legal battles, rebuilding our lives from scratch. But we'd face it together, as a team, as father and son. And somewhere in a federal holding facility, Vanessa Thompson was learning what it meant to be trapped, to be helpless, to have control stripped away. The trial began 9 months after the arrests. Marcus and I sat in the gallery as the prosecution laid out their case. The courtroom was packed with media, sufferers' families, legal observers. Vanessa sat at the defense table looking smaller than I remembered. Prison had stripped away her polish. When her eyes met mine across the courtroom, there was something in them I'd never seen before. Fear. The prosecution's case was methodical. They presented evidence chronologically, starting with the earliest sufferer in 1991 and working forward. Each case followed the same pattern: marriage, isolation, poisoning, staged accident, insurance payout. 18 men, 18 families destroyed. When they reached Richard Brennan's case, they played his video testimony, recordings he'd made in the storage unit before he died. His voice shaky but determined, describing his suspicions, showing pills he'd secretly kept, explaining that if anyone was watching this, it meant Vanessa had eliminated him. Several people in the gallery wept. I held Marcus's hand. Then came our case. The arson video played on screens throughout the courtroom. Crystal clear footage of Vincent and his partner setting incendiary devices. Text messages between Vanessa and Vincent planning the homicide. Medical records showing the poisoning. And finally, Marcus's testimony, pre-recorded to protect him. Marcus looking impossibly young, explaining calmly how he'd figured out his mother was poisoning him, how he'd pretended to be paralyzed for 4 years, how he'd built the case piece by piece because he knew no one would believe a child. The courtroom was silent. When it ended, several jurors were crying. The defense tried. They argued the evidence was circumstantial, that the passings were tragic accidents, that Marcus's testimony was unreliable because he was a child. But it was weak, desperate. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Vanessa's face crumpled when the verdict was read. Lillian sat stone-faced. Vincent stared at the table. Sentencing came 2 months later. The federal judge had clearly spent those months getting every detail of every case. "I've been on the bench for 30 years, she said, and I have never seen a conspiracy as cold-blooded, as calculated, as utterly devoid of humanity as this one. 18 men homicided, families destroyed, children left without fathers. And for what? Money?" She looked directly at Vanessa. "You had everything. A loving husband, a brilliant son, a comfortable life. And you plotted to homicide them both. You poisoned your own child for years, kept him imprisoned in a wheelchair, so you could eventually eliminate him and collect insurance money. I am struggling to comprehend that level of evil. You will spend the rest of your natural life in federal prison. You will never see freedom again. Life without parole for Vanessa, for Lillian, for Vincent, and the others." Marcus and I walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight. "I thought I'd feel better," Marcus admitted. "I thought when they got sentenced, I'd feel victorious, but I just feel empty." "That's normal. Justice doesn't fix trauma. It just closes the loop, gives you permission to move on." "Can we move on?" I thought about it. "Yeah, I think we can. It'll take time, therapy, work, but we can build something new, something better. Can we leave Portland? Start over somewhere new? Where do you want to go?" "I don't know. Somewhere warm, somewhere without memories. We can do that." "We can do whatever you want, buddy." 2 years later, I stood on a beach in San Diego watching Marcus play volleyball with kids from his high school. He was 14 now, tall and lean, laughing as he spiked the ball. A normal teenager doing normal teenager things. We'd moved south 18 months ago. Fresh start. I'd found work with an architecture firm. Marcus had enrolled in a private school with an excellent trauma-informed counseling program. We saw therapists regularly. We'd done the work. Marcus still had nightmares sometimes, still struggled with trust. But he was getting better, making friends, playing sports, being a kid, finally. The civil suits had settled. The Whitmore estate had been liquidated and sufferers' families had received restitution. Our share had been substantial enough to buy a house near the beach, pay for Marcus's school, set up a college fund. We donated a portion to organizations supporting child sufferers of parental misuse. Richard Brennan's sister had reached out. She'd wanted to meet the people who'd finally brought her brother's butcher to justice. We'd had dinner and she'd given Marcus something precious. Richard's journals from before he died. His thoughts, dreams, humor, proof that he'd been more than a sufferer. He'd been a person. Marcus had read them cover to cover and decided he wanted to study computer science in college, like Richard, a way to honor the man whose evidence had saved our lives. My phone buzzed. A text from our sufferer's advocate. "Saw the news. Lillian Whitmore died in prison. Thought you should know." I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief. Just a distant acknowledgement that another chapter had closed. Marcus jogged over, sweaty and grinning. "Did you see that spike?" "I saw it. Very impressive." I handed him a water bottle. "You having fun?" "Yeah, Tyler invited me to a party next weekend." "Can I go?" Normal questions. Normal teenage life. It still surprised me sometimes. "Yeah, you can go. Usual rules. Text me when you get there and when you're coming home." "Thanks, Dad." He started to run back, then stopped and turned. "Hey, Dad, I'm glad we moved here. I'm glad we're us." I smiled. "Me too, buddy. Me too." I watched my son rejoin the game, watched him laugh and play and just be 14. All the things he should have been doing for the past 6 years. The Whitmores were gone, dead or in prison. The threat was over. The trauma was healing. And Marcus and I were building something new, not perfect, not undamaged, but ours, real, true. On the beach in San Diego with my son laughing in the sunshine, I finally let myself believe it was over. We'd survived. We'd won. And we were going to be okay.